morning. While we're waiting for folks to hop on, if you don't mind, put in the chat where are you joining us from? So we have folks, of course, from here at U of L, but from other areas as well. So we get to know who's all in the space this morning. The chat is going to be our best friends today. Got JCTC represented. Of course, we got Louisville. Good morning to those just not joining us. Go ahead and put in the chat where you are joining us from, and since it is morning, what is your favorite breakfast food? Good morning. Ooh, we got bagels and donuts. Ooh, grits with sugar. See, I'm a grits with butter and cheese and sausage, strawberries and cream crepes. Good morning. Got more folks joining us. Go ahead and put in the chat, introduce yourself, where are you joining us from, and your favorite breakfast food. We'll wait a few more minutes to let folks into the room. Ooh, someone's currently smashing some French toast sticks and potatoes. Yum. Ooh, an omelet with apples and cheese. Lots of omelets. Okay, get your eggs in. Ooh, pecan waffles. That sounds delicious. We have leftover pizza. Right. Oh, leftover tacos. Leftovers are still good in the morning. All right. And we're going to keep letting folks in. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, introduce myself. So, I'm Jamaica Jones. I am a program coordinator here at the University of Louisville Women's Center. My favorite breakfast food are lemon and blueberry ricotta pancakes. I had them in Nashville a few summers ago, and they were delicious. Never would have thought that combination, but great combination. But I would like to welcome you to the University of Louisville virtually and the inaugural Gender Equity and Climate Justice Conference. And it is hosted by the Women's Center, and we could have not done this without our awesome partners, Louisville Metro Office for Women, Sister Song, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective, our student organization that's under our office, the United Nations Association Women Chapter, which they are the only one currently in the country. And then, of course, University of Louisville Office of Sustainability. And so, again, we have people joining us from all over. If you're joining from Kentucky, put a heart emoji in the chat. If you're joining us from somewhere else, put a thumbs up. And again, asking folks, we don't know who's in the space with us today. Introduce yourself, where you're joining us from, and what is your favorite breakfast food? Hopefully don't make us too hungry. So again, we are just so happy to have you joining us this year. And so in the spirit of supporting and fostering learning throughout generations of sharing and the knowledge that is brought to us, we would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on here in the University of Louisville is the original homeland of the Shawnee, Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Osage tribal nations. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous people still connected to this land on which we gather. I want to take a moment to pause to pay our respects. Thank you. So climate change, it impacts everyone, and the impact it's intensifying each year. We have all these natural disasters. I mean, we had tornadoes here not too long ago in Kentucky. So the United Nations, they have reported that women and girls make up 70% of the world's internally displaced population and more than 50% of the 200 million individuals affected each year by natural disasters. 1 in 5 women and girls who are refugees or displaced due to a natural disaster has experienced gender-based violence. And trafficking during disasters, unfortunately, may increase by 20 to 30%. And so today we will learn about all the different intersectionalities of gender equity, social justice, and climate justice in many of the sessions and from all of our speakers today. And with Earth Month being this month on April 22nd, definitely encourage you to check out all the different community events. I know the Office of Sustainability has lots of events, and there's stuff happening within Metro government here in Louisville, but of course, check out wherever you guys are from, ways that you can contribute and engage. But for like Office of Sustainability and some of the local events, definitely check out the Women's Center's newsletter that is on our website. And it's okay, the fun stuff. So just to make sure we have a smooth but also an engaging program today. Some of you guys may be more familiar with Zoom, so if this is your first time on Teams, welcome. Pretty similar, but you will have different options available to you. But we ask during the program to please have your mics muted, have your cameras turned off. That way we can give the attention to our amazing presenters and speakers we have today and have as much, no distractions as well for you guys to fully be engaged. There'll be opportunities throughout to be able to ask questions. And so during those moments, just use the raise hand feature. And would you like to be called on to do so? But throughout all of the sessions today, please utilize the chat. Any questions, comments, reactions, emojis. This is going to be a space we're going to be able to come together and build community. So again, definitely show some love in the chat. And of course, any questions, put it in the chat. Some we may be able to get to right in that moment, but if we're not able to get to all the questions, we'll share that with our presenters today. And so we are going to go over the schedule just real quickly. After I finish my little introduction here, we will have our first morning session, our gender equity leadership. And then Okiki, Nourishing Change Through Art, will also be within this meeting. For all of our breakout sessions, which you received an email with links to, and I will put in the chat links to, you'll be taken to a different meeting space for one of the 5 sessions that you choose from. I know it's probably tough picking one. They will be recorded. So if you're like, ooh, I want to go to all of them, you have an opportunity to still get the information from the session that you may have not been able to go to. But then for our last session, Gender Equity and Climate Justice Activism panel, we'll be returning back to this room. And that's where we'll also have our closing. So on our website, which I will put these links in the chat, you can find all this information, our speaker bios, more information about the different sessions. But figured you probably don't want to be flooded with a bunch of words on your screen for you guys to be able to choose what you will do. But I am very excited. We do have a lot of U of L students who are participating, whether they're speakers or even facilitating some of our sessions. And so just being able to have these opportunities for these students to share their expertise and knowledge, we're really excited to do that this year. So to begin, for our gender equity leadership session, I'm excited to bring my director, Dr. Giovanni Bennett, the Women's Center director, on board. So thank you, and show some love in the chat.
Yay. Hello, everyone. And I'm just so excited to be here. And also a shout out to Jamaica Jones for doing all this work, the legwork to co-create this space. And again, before we jump on the conversation, another shout out to our ancestors for bringing us this far. A shout out to us on the call for striving to get good, better, best, and never let it rest until our good is better and our better is best, y'all. And also a shout out to our future super babies who will rock this work out to the best of their ability. So I just want to give everybody in the room a moment of celebration and recognition. So the first thing with this amazing guest, because I want them to speak for themselves and share their truth, I would like for the panelists for this session to share your name, pronouns, your official title, the title you would give yourself outside of your professional work and goals, and last, how are you breathing today? Instead of how are you doing today? So that's a question shared by our beloved Dr. Falami, who just visited the University of Louisville campus with our Gumbo Yaya student leadership series. And she is a Sister Song honorary member and self-care ritualist expert. So, and just for example, my name is Jabani Bennett, aka Dr. Jabani. My pronouns are she, they. I'm the director of the Women's Center, but my real title close to my heart is I'm an artist mama, I'm a cultural equity planner, I'm an arts strategist, and I'm a water dancer. I would dance and dance and dance. And how am I breathing today? I am joyful about the experience, but sometimes I'm weary about the world. So I'll start out with Gretchen, and then follow with Regina, and then Ananicia. Regina, I apologize.
Good morning. Gretchen Hunt. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as director of the Louisville Metro Office for Women. And my real title, in addition, is that I'm a mother, I am an advocate, I am a creative, and I am breathing with gratitude today. So thank you. I'll toss it to Regina.
Good morning, friends. My name is Regina V. Carrico. I use they, them pronouns. My big kid job is a paramedic. However, today I'm representing the Office for Women as an ambassador. My title that I would give myself is your friendly neighborhood paramedic queer. And today I am breathing fresh because today is a new day and we will see how it goes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Ananicia Williams, excited to be here with you all. I have the pleasure of representing Sister Song Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. I am the Kentucky State Coordinator. I use she, her pronouns. My breath, I would say coastal. And so coastal is something that Dr. Falami shared with us in regards to how we hold our breath, where we hold it in our body. My hope is that you all get to engage with Sister Song at some point and meet Dr. Falami and the rest of the Sister Song team. The title I would hold is Community Connector. I could consider myself a comedian amongst my friends, so I'm a humorous enthusiast. And then I would just say just vibrant woman.
All right, let's get to it. I'm so excited, too excited. Yes. All right, so first you would take us on your journey. Because I admire these panelists so much in their work. Please tell me about your work in gender equity and how did you enter into this professional journey? So we're going to go into, we'll have a slide presentation at this moment, and they'll give you a little bit of the breadth and depth of the work that the presenters have on this call.
So good morning with that. I come from almost a quarter century, which we should claim that, right? Women and other folks are taught not to age, but I'm proud of that almost quarter century. Being an activist from the time I was in college for women's rights and rights of survivors of gender-based violence to now where I get to partner with folks across the community at the Office for Women. So deeply and broadly, our vision is really bold. So we envision a community in Louisville where women and gender diverse individuals can thrive. So not just focusing on surviving, but on thriving, and gender equity is the norm. And the way that we do that is through policy, program, and education, and fostering a shared responsibility for building gender equity. That's a lot of language to say basically that when you are talking about gender equity, it's not just shared rights and responsibilities and distribution. It is also that we are all committed to understanding that this is in all of our best interests. So often we talk about rights for women, but we don't talk about shared responsibilities, like that men can also take on caregiving responsibilities. So that's part of what we are doing. And real quickly, I just want to say that one of the work that we're doing, part of the work that we're doing is trying to promote gender equity and this shared engagement across all of Louisville Metro and all of Louisville. And this is a real shift, because the reason I love this work in particular right now is because it's so holistic. Having worked for years on women's rights and gender-based violence prevention, I was in one silo, and now I can partner across lots of different groups, including people working on planning and transportation and the built environment, to think about how do we create spaces that are more welcoming and inclusive and safe. So what we're trying to do is get everybody, no matter where they sit, to think about gender equity and to consider it really seriously in all these aspects. So I'm not going to go deeply into those, but that's part of what we're doing right now, is saying be really creative in wherever you sit to look at gender equity. And one thing I want to highlight before I toss it over to Regina is that one of the most exciting things we are doing right now, when you talk about intersectional work, I think of intersectionality not just in the way that Kim Crenshaw first talked about this in 1993, right? So long ago, about the intersections of where people stand in relation to their racial identity, their ethnic identity, their gender identity, but also the intersections of our work and the intersections of local and global. And so I think no better way to think about that than climate justice, because we know that our work is bound up. We are interdependent. And so one of the most exciting things that I think we are doing is partnering with Change, which is an international network. It's called the City Hub and Network for Gender Equity. Louisville is the second U.S. city to join this network after Los Angeles. And the cities include Mexico City, Barcelona, Tokyo, Freetown, Sierra Leone, lots of other cities that are much bigger than us. But they looked at the work that we were doing with you all, with community, with U of L, with other partners, and said that the work you're doing on gender equity is innovative. And so we are learning in this circular way from what the women are doing in Bogota, Colombia, and what the women are doing in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and how can that apply to Louisville. I'll give you a really concrete example. The city of Barcelona, which is a feminist planned city, did a survey on transportation and women and girls and gender diverse individuals' perception of safety. And they took that information and changed their transportation system. Change has said that they're going to try to get funding for Louisville to do that same thing. So that's just an idea of how we change environments. And we'll talk more deeply today about climate justice, but even thinking really, really boldly about how we make spaces, because we move about in bodies. And for bodies who have a disability, bodies that are gendered and racialized and misgendered in this space, it's even harder to move about. And so we're really excited about getting strategies for how do we open up those spaces so that people can thrive. So I'm going to toss it over to Regina to talk about our really exciting program about how we do the work at the Office for Women as well. So Regina, I'll toss it to you.
Thanks, Gretchen. Before I get into my little discussion on what I had prepared for our conversation on Office for Women, the fire that lit my gender equity journey was when I was a youth, and my father would use gendered language, saying you can't do X, Y, or Z because you're a girl. And for me, it was why does it matter that I'm a girl, and B, do I have to fit within this binary of language for things? So as I got older, I began to discover not only gender identity, but also like all the disparities that other individuals face on a day-to-day basis, and where I can do better on these things. So real quick. So for the last 10 and a half years, I've served as a public servant and healthcare provider in emergency medical services within Southern Indiana and Louisville. In 2023, I received the privilege and honor of becoming an ambassador in the inaugural class of Office for Women Ambassadors. The description on the website will tell you that it is a 6-month training program for women and gender diverse individuals to hone their leadership skills and learn about the issues impacting our most vulnerable in our community, in addition to what government and community programs are available. While this is absolutely true, it is so much more than that. Our cohort came from a variety of organizations within the city. Each session we learned, we connected, we uplifted each other through the highs and lows in life, while supporting each other in our work. During our sessions, we were given the opportunity to talk about the barriers that our organizations and the people we support face, while also being vulnerable about our own experiences facing inequity. In these moments of vulnerability, we witnessed our fellow ambassadors and invigorated each other to keep going and doing the work. We strengthened our connective tissue through our communities and expanded our networks. With each and every cohort, our network will continue growing, tackling each and every challenge coming our way. And with that, we can pass it on.
All right, Dr. Williams, let's hear it. Yes.
Okay, let me make sure. Is it okay if I just say next slide to you all and you go to the next slide?
That works.
I don't have control yet.
Oh.
Thank you. All right, so everyone, I have the pleasure of talking about Sister Song. The great thing about this work, I have a background in social work, and so I have been in social work for probably about the past 10 years, and I feel like Sister Song, I found my home. So when you think about the work that I started off doing in regards to residential facilities with children of the state, and then merging into Family Scholar House and doing a lot of work with students, parents, and working through that, Sister Song just came, I will say, because my background is in perinatal mental health, where I was able to connect. And so I'm going to give you just a little teaser, because you all have the ability to meet my colleague, which is Lori Rodriguez, who is also going to go into a deeper dive on gender equity and what does climate justice look like as well. And so this is an overview, and I'm encouraging you later on today to go check out Lori's session. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next slide. So I'm going to just give you some basic history of Sister Song. And so this year is very beautiful to us because this makes 30 years of reproductive justice. And so Sister Song's mission is actually to strengthen and amplify the collective voices of Black, Indigenous women, and women of color to achieve reproductive justice by eradicating reproductive oppression and securing human rights. You hear that and you may say, what does that look like? How do we do that? How do we organize? And so that is the purpose of my work here in the state of Kentucky. We are national based, but we have home states, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Georgia. And then we're doing some work in Florida as well. But that does not mean that we do not serve all of the states and do global work too. As a state coordinator, I am responsible for many of you on this screen. I've been making connections, figuring out the conversations, how do we build community, but also because we're national based, Sister Song is very strategic when you think about the leadership perspective of we've been around for a while, but we're new to Kentucky. And so we want to amplify the work that our community partners are already doing. And so we knew that coming into the state of Kentucky, we did not want to take over. We wanted to be in community. And so that is the beautiful work when you think about leadership, is allowing people that already have paved the way, they're on the front lines, and saying, how can we support you? Next slide, please. And so this is just a brief timeline of what it looked like in regards to the reproductive justice movement. Again, I want to highlight that this year makes 30 years of reproductive justice. And so as you see on there, in 1994, we call them our founding mothers. 12 Black women came together and said that, wait a minute, there are some things missing. And now when you just think about reproductive health, this is also sexual health as well. And what they did was coin the phrase of reproductive justice. So as you see, they took social justice and reproductive rights and merged the two words together, which now we have reproductive justice. What I tell people is that if we were getting what we needed in regards to our reproductive health and reproductive rights, RJ would not have to be here. So while we are here celebrating 30 years, it also feels as if we are stepping back in the way that people are getting access to the care that they need, people being able to choose to have children and not have children. As you see on the timeline as well, in 1997, that is when Sister Song was actually created as an organization. And so they have been doing a lot of work in the South, but it is so exciting to now be here in Kentucky, which we opened our office back in 2023 of October. Some of you all had the pleasure to come and experience that or come to our office. I do extend that invitation to you all if you ever want to tour our office as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the actual statement, public statement that these 12 individuals put out in regards to Black women on healthcare reform. I do encourage you to Google this because it is accessible for your knowledge. It's important to know when we think about, we just wrapped up Black Maternal Health Week. And so this year's theme through Black Mamas Matter Alliance was Our Bodies Belong to Us, Reproductive Justice Now. And so what they wanted us to understand is while we have poor social and health determinants in regards to Black bodies, they did yesterday post on their site the 12 individuals that was amplifying this work and stating that had you done what you were supposed to do, we would not be where we are today. So it's putting the pressure back on the system to ensure that they are implementing the things that is needed for our reproductive health and rights. Next slide, please. So Sister Song also has founding mothers. When you think about Sister Song, who began in 1997, these are the two individuals that we want you to remember. You all may be familiar with Loretta Ross, which she was the first national coordinator of Sister Song. If you have not heard of Loretta Ross, please Google her. There are plenty presentations on YouTube to hear about her work. And then you have Louise Rodriguez, who is the founder of Sister Song. Monica Simpson, which is our executive director, tells a beautiful story about Louise Rodriguez actually writing down on a napkin how Sister Song was formed. And so just think of when you're in community meetings, something as simple as jotting down your thoughts on a napkin can form and organize when you think about movement building. Next slide, please. And next slide. So when you think about the framework, expanding beyond the choice. So you've heard me utilize these terms of reproductive health, reproductive rights, reproductive justice. I want to highlight to you, when you think about the state of Kentucky, what this may look like. So when we say reproductive health, it's that state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So you may think about your Planned Parenthoods. You may think about your hospitals. You may think about also your community health centers as well. Then when you think about reproductive rights, you may think about ACLU Kentucky. You may also think about governmental agencies that are working on policies as well that help support what it looks like for people having access to reproductive health. And then when you think about reproductive justice, we are centering the lived experiences of these marginalized people, identifying and how they identify themselves, how they identify the oppressive systems that they have to go up against. And so that is when you consider organizing. That is when you consider advocacy. That is also when you consider collaboration amongst communities. And so over time, you have been able to see reproductive justice organizations expand. I do encourage you all to do your research and learn who else is across the country doing the work too. Next slide, please. And so we practice from a human rights framework. It is important to know this as well. And so as we're talking about gender equity, as we are also talking about climate justice, we want you all to tie it back to the human rights framework. And so as you see, you have civil rights on there, you have political, economic, but I also want you to consider there's intersections when you think about reproductive justice. So it includes economic justice. It also includes environmental justice. It also includes healing justice, disability justice. It also includes criminalization when we think about individuals. And so an example would be Kentucky is a forced birth state. We can consider in other states, there are individuals who are being criminalized for seeking abortion access. And so we want to be really intentional when we talk about reproductive health, reproductive rights, even gender equity, practicing from a human rights lens, because everyone should have access to human rights. Even when you think about your sexual rights, how people choose to identify themselves, how people choose to, if they have bodily autonomy as well, it is important. And one thing I do have to highlight, because as I said, 2024 is important to Sister Song, is sexual rights too. And so this year makes our Let's Talk About Sex conference that is coming up in August. We do encourage you all to check out our website, submit a proposal. We are looking for proposals. We want to hear your voices. We want to have you in the space in Washington, D.C. from August 22nd through the 26th. The other thing I want to amplify is we do give out scholarships. So there are scholarships opportunities for you all as well to serve as a volunteer to be a part of that conference. What is so beautiful about the conference is you have people all over coming in. So you will get access to individuals who are in leadership positions, people who are doing innovative work. Again, all these intersections of reproductive justice, you are going to be able to get exposed to environmental justice, gender equity, healing justice, birth justice as well. Next slide, please. So when we think about the RJ framework, I want to ensure that you know that there are tenets. So the tenets of RJ are decide if you want a child and the conditions under which you give birth, but also if you do not want to have a child and the options for preventing and ending a pregnancy, and then parenting these children in safe and sustainable communities is also important. So as you see there, without the fear of violence from individuals or the state. And so when I think about the city of Louisville, I do know we struggle with violence in here. And so I encourage individuals, when you're having conversations about a child we've lost in the community, about a parent we lost in the community, please tie it back to the RJ framework, because it is expansive and it hits on so many different social issues that are happening in our communities. And the last RJ tenet is bodily autonomy, so free from all forms of reproductive oppression. And next slide, please. I want to take you on a quick timeline of Sister Song Kentucky. And so while we opened up our office in 2023, I want you to know that we were here in 2021. So when Breonna Taylor was murdered, we were very intentional to talk about how she did not get to have a reproductive future. And so we pulled up in front of Louisville Metro Police Department. We had a billboard, a mobile billboard, where it actually had the tweet that Breonna had. So she talked about, my daughter hasn't even been born yet, but she has a name. And so we wanted to highlight that when she was murdered, her reproductive future was lost. And so our executive director, Monica Simpson, shared with the media, she put out into the world that she wanted to be a parent. She wanted to be able to create family, and that was stolen from her because of police brutality. And we center this to let you all know that this is a form of reproductive justice as well. Next slide, please. want to highlight RJ on Tour. And so many of you may have had the experience to come to RJ on Tour. This was summer 2023. We were very intentional to hit our home states, so Kentucky, North Carolina, Georgia, and then we wrapped up the tour in New Orleans because every year we go to the Essence Festival. But I want you all to know, when you think about Sister Song being in Kentucky, that means everywhere in Kentucky. So the rural counties, we want to get into those counties as well. We were in Lexington, Kentucky, and then we were also in Louisville, Kentucky. And what we did with the bus tour, again, we brought it back to community. We were intentional in identifying the community partners in those locations to expand and amplify their work. So you saw individuals like Play Cousins there. You saw Kentucky Health Justice Network there. We wanted to ensure that we had them in that space, but also allow community to understand that they are part of the movement. I think I saw Dr. Falami on here. Dr. Falami was there. So we actually had Dr. Falami on the bus doing some spiritual healing, some sound bowl baths with individuals too. This is the type of work that we talk about in Sister Song. Is we're not only taking care of the individuals, but we're taking care of the community. We're taking care of the people on the front lines. And so if you'll go to the next slide, I want to talk about the noun when you think about Sister Song Kentucky. This is just a glimpse of some of the things that we have been intentional in doing and bringing in to community. So on here, I have to highlight the University of Louisville Women's Center, who has been an amazing partner. We just wrapped up Gumbo Yaya Student Leadership Series, where we also got to bring in Dr. Falami in that last session talking about self-care, but allowing these students to really dig deep of what does it look like when I am on the front lines. Maybe I come from a marginalized group. How do I hold that? How do we hold space together? And then that evening, we also had Dr. Falami come in and allowed individuals to be with their body, you know, allow individuals to connect with one another. And then I'll just share personally, someone who does this work, that was the night I was able to get a release as well from my body and just be in community and feel the support. And that's important to know for those of you who are on here, is that showing up and doing this work is challenging. But how do you take a step back and take care of yourself as well and be open to community to allow them to hold you? And so that is something big about Sister Song. We want to hold you, the people who are on the front lines as well, and ensure that you can show up and continue to do the work. The other thing I'll highlight is our RJ monologues as well. So we teamed up with Girl Code Louisville. We are doing storytelling. So storytelling is about, we all have an RJ story to tell. Our first one was talking about abortion access. This past Sunday, we did birth joy, justice. So oftentimes when you hear about Black maternal health, you hear the doom and gloom. We wanted to celebrate the joy. And so people talked about having access to doulas, having access to lactation support, but then also what did it look like to have the village supporting you as you continue to parent? We have a birth justice care fund that I want to highlight to you all that will be opening soon. So what we allow individuals from marginalized communities to have access to is doulas, lactation support, and we just added mental health support. Not only can they have access to either services, but baby items. And when you think about baby items, we want to make sure you have the support in regards to strollers, car seats, baby wipes, diapers, bassinet. We want to encourage safe sleep, and then breast pump as well. So the things that get in the way of individuals' reproductive lives, individuals having the rights to parent, we want to ensure that we can lessen the gap a little bit for them. The other thing I just want to highlight, because we are in Louisville, the Derby is coming up. We have some events coming up, so Oaks Day Watch Party, and we are so blessed to work with DJ Z Nice that has created some hats. If you've been seeing, there are some hats that say Trust Black Women, which is our Trust Black Women campaign that was created years ago to talk about a billboard that went up in Georgia where it said the most unsafe environment for a child is in the Black mother's womb. And so that was our response with other organizations. But that has amplified to Trust Black Women to Lead, Trust Black Women as well, when we say our pain tolerance, when we are speaking out on issues as well. Donations from the hat sales is going to go right back into Sister Song and then right back into the community to serve you all. And then on Mother's Day, we have a Trust Black Women brunch that is open to community as well. These are the things that we like to do as far as it's just hard work, but we want to celebrate the joy, the pleasure of doing this work as well. And then I'll end with this last slide. Our vision for reproductive justice is that when all people have economic, social, and political power and resources to make healthy decisions about our bodies, sexuality, and reproduction for ourselves, our families, and our communities in all areas of our lives. So we thank you. We encourage you to become a member of Sister Song, get connected, and just thank you for welcoming us into the space.
All right. Woo! So do you see why I was so excited to bring these amazing people on this call? So we're going to break it down, and we have about less than 20 minutes to really get overarching strategy work. So anybody on this call can have some takeaways based on your professional experience, your lived experience, and also today's best practices, the scholarship that you know. So please keep your responses to like 2 minutes or less as we go through, like, what does this all mean to connect with climate justice? What does it all mean to connect with our earth that we are all on? Like, what's it about? So the first question is, let's get straight to it. What is leadership to you? And please keep your response 2 minutes or less. And we'll start, we'll keep going with Gretchen, Regina, I apologize, Regina, and which is a beautiful name, Regina and Ananicia. So we'll keep going into that circle, and I'll mute myself.
Thank you, Dr. Giovanni. So leadership, I think, needs to be unpacked. I'm going to look at what Regina said, which I think is so beautiful, that is connective tissue. So there is a notion that the bonds between atoms or elements are stronger and become unbreakable. So I really do think the more collective leadership is the way that we really need to lead. And maybe leading isn't even the right word or verb. It's more of progress, that we need to progress. And so the way that I've done that structurally within government, which is still very much within a hierarchical structure of individuals representing, like, I'm the only person in the office for women, I'm supposedly supposed to be the spokesperson and the speaker, is to disrupt that a little bit and spread it out. So the ambassadors is the strategy. So that's what I would say leadership looks like. And I really do think my very favorite quote in the world, I think, in addition to only connect, which is E.M. Forrester, is James Baldwin, who said, and I'm paraphrasing it, but the older I get, the more I realize that love is holding up a mirror to one another. So I think leadership is reflecting back that light. And I know that sounds real hokey, but I think it's actually a very good strategy for how we amplify each other and grow solutions. So that's what I would say leadership looks like.
To kind of add on to how Gretchen describes it, is obviously I work in a very in a fire-based system where we also have a hierarchical structure where we operate within one things. And obviously in certain scenarios, yes, that is important because ultimately one person is going to be making the decision for everybody else. However, for me, in my version of leadership, or how I would like to see leadership in the future, is you are the one leading by example. So you are the one that is showing, okay, if I'm going to be the best person in my profession, then I need to show everybody else that I am, this is what we're doing, and everybody else. And I think Gretchen really does a beautiful job of giving everybody in the ambassador program and in the Office for Women just like you know, it's not just me doing all the talking and expressing all the things and all the teaching on leadership. It's also giving everybody else the opportunity to say, what does leadership look like to you? Or showing, and also giving everybody the opportunity to be a leader if they want to, because not everyone is given the opportunity to be able to lead in different ways, because it's really the different ways that'll make it a stronger leadership in the end.
Yeah. And I'll share my perspective of walking into Sister Song. I've had to unlearn a lot of ways that I have been conditioned within systems. And so Sister Song is a nonprofit, but what I will say, I've worked in nonprofit for years, and it's non-traditional in how the leadership works. And so while we have hierarchical chart, it looks like our ED literally asking us, well, what do you want to do? Go dream, go be creative. Let's figure out how to support your creativity. And so I really value that, especially being able to coordinate a state to say, you have autonomy to think about what is your community saying? What are some things that you are seeing? Dream it up, submit a proposal, and let's see how we support that. And so I also think it's twofold. So the leaderships also have to inspire and give these individuals up under them the platform to do that. And then when they do dream, where's the backing to support that as well?
Yes. Oh, I'm nerding out on this. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so bringing it again, some takeaways. How do we build and sustain a group that supports climate justice, frame, and intersectional feminism? So based on your lived experience, professional work, and scholarship, and I can break it down in another way, how do we grow connections with each others and keep things going and still connect with what we believe in? So that's just, I'm trying to put it in another way so it's not so academic. How do we do this? How do we grow with each other?
I don't mind beginning that, and I hope you all are okay with me sharing this to the audience, is that we're doing that in real time with each other. So while we are on this screen, we are also representing that is happening and occurring. And so being able to connect with Dr. Giovanni, and so we invited her in to come when we had our open house to see Sister Song, meet the team, and then it is expanded and grown into partnership. And then working with Gretchen and being a part of a 2024 ambassador. But we had some touch points before then, prior to that. And so making those connections and being intentional, and be okay with reaching out and asking a question. Are you interested? Can we have a conversation? So make space to share time with one another so you can see, does our visions align? Do we want the same things? And then you let the magic happen and you continue to check in with each other.
So I would just add that I think part of the way that we do it is these intentional convenings or getting together. And I think I just want to do a shout out also to Dr. Giovanni for the role of creatives in this. And so I also want to lift up how important it is to have people who are really dreaming and visioning. And I want to lift up Nairi Clayton-Taylor with Hip Hop to Learning, who uses hip hop and lifting up youth as a way of pushing policy, like the Crown Act and other advocacy. Councilman Ja'Cory Arthur, who beautifully blends hip hop, classical music, and policy work. Also, incidentally, and I say this to him, shows up as a very involved and vocal parent of small kids who's in legislative position, which is hard to do. So I think the role of creatives and really playing a little bit with this, and this is a big unlearning. I'm trained as a lawyer, so I'm trained to look at, diagnose a problem and attack it and be adversarial. So the idea of letting go and being creative is really different, but I do think that's really great. And I really credit Dr. Giovanni for helping tease that out as well.
I don't know if I have much more to add. I think it was beautifully described as we have to all work together. And for me, when I was learning about, well, why do I have to pay attention to these different things? It's just like, well, it all affects us in the end, because not only are we just one individual in a system, but we're also a community in a bigger system. And then even within the community of that system is the world of the system. So each little part plays a role with each other. So that's about all I got. I think it was beautifully described in the beginning of this question.
Excellent. So we have 3 more core questions that we want to leave our audience with as we look at leadership models anchored in gender equity and intersectional feminism. The next one is about communication. So I'll give you the academic and the other way. What is the most effective communication approaches for diverse communities that lead to better understanding of core issues and asset mapping based on your experiences? Or let's switch it. What's the best way to connect with each other so we're all seen and heard? And please keep your responses a minute less, because we have just 10 minutes left. We have 2 more questions.
If it's okay with you all, I have kind of a way of describing the answer for, or at least how I feel how to answer this question. For a long time, for me, feminism was always this like shouting and screaming until someone heard what I was talking about. Well, anybody shouting and screaming at you, you're not going to really want to listen to what they're saying. So for me, that was the important lesson of kind of pausing and listening and doing active listening, but also having intentional conversations with people who have either different experiences or different points of view. After doing that, it would be taking in all that you learned so that you can expand your understanding of how you communicate with different people. And then once you've kind of gathered all that, then you can go back and explain, okay, this is why this is important, because yes, it's not my experience, but this is someone else's experience who may not be able to speak up for themselves.
So when I think about this question, I think about the traditional way within the workspace. They're going to want to do an evaluation. They're going to want to do some type of focus group, which is great. So you can support the work that you do. But something I also want to encourage you all who are in spaces and you're extracting information from community, incentivize them, ensure that they get what they need when you are trying to get information from them. You know, offer childcare, offer food, offer some type of gift card, transportation, or something if you can, if you're trying to learn how you can be better in community with them. But I would even say on a professional level amongst each other is get comfortable with being able to have this hard dialogue of the work. So even when we think about, well, what could we do better on, or what we were struggling with, and finding ways to also support each other's work. And so as we highlighted, we may be in different spaces working on different social issues, but there are times where this intersects and we need to communicate. So if we're having a community event and we know like we're all trying to do it on the same day, maybe we should collaborate. Maybe we should have the community come to one space. Maybe we should expand upon our resources. That is important as well, is showing community that we are in community with one another and how we work together.
And I want to build on what Dr. Ananicia said. I think we're all architects of this, what this new world looks like, right? So I think of it as that layering. And I think we need to get serious about building that structure. So we've known that structures have been oppressive and haven't worked for us. But structures like having policies that say, we're going to have childcare if we have any public meeting. We're going to have interpretation. We're going to walk through it, Sashella Durling, to make sure it's accessible to folks with disabilities or in different bodies. So I think we need to get serious about the structure. And another person that I would lift up, their name is Valerie Frost, who's with Kentucky Youth Advocates, who gives really good guidance on when we do this work and we bring in people with lived experience, or when we are working with communities that have lived experience of any types of navigating things that are hard. that we need to be serious and be, as Dr. Anicia has talked about, like, make sure it's not exploitative, make sure it works for people. So I really do feel strongly that we need to be like, put things in writing and write them down and create that new structure. And that's what will govern and give rise to authentic relationships that don't feel uneven and exploitative, I guess.
Yes, I'm like doing amens, ashe, everything over here. And I'm sure people on the call are too, which we'll get to you all, our amazing audience, shortly. Now, academic, and then I'm going to break it down in another way. How do you fail up in leadership in environmental justice efforts? What happens when you feel that you or your group make a mistake? So I'm going to put it in the other way right now. How can we deal with mistakes? Where do we go with that? When mistakes can also carry shame and judgment, what do we do with it?
We got to hold space for it. Oftentimes, as you're doing this work, you'll just keep going. So I think it's important to pause and sit with it, talk it through, especially when you are a community organization and something happens because the community is relying on you to have the answers, to figure it out within the organization, but then you also have a responsibility to the community to address them and to invite them in and to let them know, listen, we take accountability for what has happened. We invite you in to assist us in doing better. How do we move forward? That doesn't happen a lot. A lot of the times you don't see people apologizing for what has happened, as we did fail up, but then also give ourselves grace and then encourage the community to give us grace too, because we are learning along the way. As most of us probably know on this call, things are changing, like environment, things are moving at a rapid pace that we are trying to just figure it out and keep our minds, in a space to keep up. And so that's the other thing, is that we don't slow down as well. And so I just really encourage us to slow down sometimes too, and be intentional with that, like making sure we allow ourselves to slow down as we continue to be in community and do this work.
I think the really important word is accountability. This is something that I continually encourage myself to do, but also others, is taking that moment to acknowledge that, yes, I made a mistake. Okay, was this unintentional? Was I unaware of what I have done? Or was this like a willful things outside of that? And then learning, okay, how can this be an opportunity to grow and learn from this mistake? Because we're imperfect beings. There's no way that we're going to go through life without making a mistake. So we need to be able to just pause, like Dr. Williams just said, is just taking that pause to acknowledge, okay, I've made a mistake. Let me see how I can fix this mistake. Apologize for said mistake, and then also, yes, giving that opportunity for the grace of just saying, okay, I'm learning from this, I'm going to try and be better from this.
So 2 concepts that have been very, very helpful for me. Impact over intent is important. So Ashanti Golar, who's the president of Merge Kentucky, where I used to work, really talked about that being a core value of the organization. So it was actually, whether we intended it or not, like, let's deal with the impact and deal with it and move on, know better, do better. But then also Sumeda Rao, and I'm naming a lot of women, and I'm doing that intentionally because for people not at the table, bring them in, right? Bring them in. Sumeda Rao, who's the executive director of the Office of Sustainability for the city of Louisville. She's amazing. Follow her. Talks about how we need hope in order to motivate action. Shame does not motivate action. Shame gets us into a shame spiral and we don't act. So that's part of white supremacy and patriarchy and homophobia that pushes us down. And we actually need hope to move forward. So it's this balance of, like, if you know better, do better, change it, but then have hope, because without that, you're not going to progress forward.
All right. Thank you so much. How do you fail up? So this very important that is really for a last question, and then we're going to go to the audience. And Jamaica, let us know we have about 5 minutes or so for questions following this. How do you integrate self-care, liberatory pleasure practices, and radical joy into your leadership roles? Because our ancestors have already taught us you can work yourself to the ground and then you're gone. Yes, we will celebrate you after you leave, but how do you do it real time while you're living? And we're in gratitude of the folks that are teaching us now. So breaking that down, how do you take care of yourself in this work? Please tell me, because I'm learning too.
I'll take this because I'm passionate. So I paint, I paddleboard, if I supervise people, I make sure they take time off. So you model it. But there's lots of things you can do that are free and accessible and just do that. But you have to take the time and pour into yourself. So that's what I do. I wanted to jump in.
I'll share as well. I'm a therapist as well. And what I tell people, I have my own therapist. It is important for me to have my own space that I can process. I can work through what I'm going through, but just what I've been through too, because what I don't want to do, because this work is really hard, is bleed onto people or harm people in the work as well. The other thing is, because if you are showing up in community a lot, I take a step back as well. And I spend time with myself. I spend time with my family. I disconnect, and I'm okay with that. And so there are times where my phone goes on do not disturb. There are times where I need to unplug from social media. And then the other thing, I like to move. And I know you love that, Giovanni. So movement is your thing. Every time we're in a space together, you are moving. Movement is helpful for me when I cannot find the words to say what I'm feeling or what I'm holding, but I can release it in movement.
This has always been a difficult one for me, but right now, the thing that I'm constantly trying to encourage is just like what brings me joy, and continually looking for new things, new opportunities that answer that question. So primarily right now, I'm an ultimate Frisbee enthusiast. We have a wonderful ultimate Frisbee community here in Louisville. I've been playing on and off for like the last 13 years. And they're trying really hard to be more opening to gender diverse individuals, when historically it's been just, male, female players, etc. I like to bake. I like to journal. One of the things that really help invigorate me is find those relationships that fill up your cup. And one of those examples is all the ambassadors that I've met in my cohort and Gretchen. We all take time to fill up each other's cup.
So in this part, what we ask for the audience is to put your questions in the chat, just so, because there's so many. So please take this moment to put your questions in the chat, and we will, in this 2 to 3 or 3 to 5 minutes, when Jamaica starts saying, hey, it's time. And so Ashley, if you can share your question. Others, if you have questions, please put it in the chat. And as we wait just 30 seconds or so for questions, if there's anything exciting that you all see that's evolving in climate justice that connects with your work, like you're thinking, oh my goodness, and this connects with the scholarship, things you see on the ground, people that might have not been considered in peer-reviewed articles. So what is something exciting that you're seeing? Please put your questions in the chat. Audience, please put your questions in the chat. So whoever wants to start, just what's something exciting that you're seeing in climate justice work?
Recently on Facebook, I saw one of our ambassadors went with their group to plant a whole bunch of trees. So one of the things we learned about in our sessions was how specifically towards like the west and south end of Louisville don't have enough tree coverage. So we, as even though our city is so small, we don't have enough tree coverage to be able to decrease the temperature overall. It's just a bunch of concrete. So the fact that one of our ambassadors went as a group to plant a whole bunch of new trees in this vulnerable area. So I wanted to take a moment to raise that up as one of the things that is going on right now.
Yeah, Friday at 2 p.m., the Office of Sustainability is going to be at Alberta Jones Park, which was renamed by community. So Parks Alliance organized with community to rename it. There are opportunities later on that are going to come up for other parks to rename them from community. But that's something that I think is great because it's in a community that has historically been disinvested, and it's a beautiful park. It's accessible. So that's happening Friday at 2 p.m. if anybody wants to join us.
So we have some action going on in the chat, and Dr. Williams, definitely feel free to chime in of what some exciting things you're seeing in connection with climate justice and your work. But in the chat, there's a few links shared that Jamaica may find ways to include this, especially when we give it to a larger audience on YouTube in the future. But just to share more about Trust Black Women and some of the links in there. And we had a question from Ashley Howard, so feel free to share.
While Ashley is taking her time to put that in the chat,
Yeah.
I do want to say that I attended a beautiful event a couple of weeks ago that was hosted by Play Cousins, Change Today, Change Tomorrow, Dr. Shelby Pumphrey from the University of Louisville, who is in Pan-African Studies, where we had an herbal gathering at Play Cousins. And so I also want you all to consider climate justice is also how we take care of our land. And so we started off with a sound bath by Nurture the West, which is also ran by one of the 2024 ambassadors, Traciel. And so starting off there, allowing people to just be in the environment, lay on the grass, listen to the sound. A lot of people fell asleep, but then going back to Play Cousins and talking about herbs and how it impacts our bodies and how we can go find herbs to heal our bodies. Also, Change Today, Change Tomorrow. So with Taylor Ryan, we did some juicing. What does that look like? So how do we have access to the fresh fruits and vegetables as well in our community? So when you're thinking about Louisville and where we have issues of non-access to groceries and fresh foods and how the environment is impacting the growth of our plants and our vegetables, that's something to have a bigger conversation about. But then also, as I'm mentioning some of these names and organizations, how do we support their work when we think about climate justice too?
Excellent. So we do have some questions in the chat. Please put in questions in the chat until Jamaica tells us we got to get off. There's an initiative from Ashley. This is an initiative outlined by Vanessa Carey from Seed Global Health and the Peace Corps that brings medical specialists to global regions facing health disparities to address teaching and mentoring students, bringing education leadership in healthcare. How do you think that this type of leadership will work with bringing up new generations of health leaders specialized for homes? All right.
So it's, for me, being in both public sector and healthcare, I've started to see more of a pivot from let's just get in as many patients as possible to now taking the intentional time to explain to every individual, like, okay, this is what your medication is going to do. This is how it interacts with different medications. This is how it could interact with different food groups. And everyone, especially in healthcare, especially in my job, sometimes it's just going to a person's house and explaining, okay, this is how you can take care of yourself. This is how we can avoid going to having a very expensive emergency department and ambulance bill. And here's some alternative ways, and here are the signs and symptoms to look out for when you need that additional help. So giving those people essentially the instructions of how to take care of yourself, both, physically, mentally, and spiritually in each different categories, will help boost up the leaders that are doing that for the future. So when medicine, it's like medicine, anything after 5 years old is considered outdated because it's just continually going. So for each generation that goes forward, then they're going to take what they've previously learned and saying, okay, this is what we're seeing now. This is how we're going to teach it now. And then it's just going to keep that train going and going and going. So hopefully I answered your question a little bit.
And I love the diverse expertise that is on this call. So we are going to close this out. If you could share one word of wisdom to share with our students, staff, faculty, community members who are amped up, they are excited to make change in climate justice, to support our earth in the diverse ways that we can with different leadership models and approaches. What is that one word or phrase that you can give to them to put on their hearts today, this morning?
For me, the one word that I always encourage anybody is empathy. Always practice empathy. Just because one person looks one way, you don't know what's going on in their internal life. So the best thing we can do is try to be as kind and empathetic towards ourselves, but also kind and empathetic towards others.
I'm going to assume that everyone on this call is very passionate about this work and shows up for community. I'm going to encourage you to rest. That's the word I'm going to leave you with, rest.
And I will say, be gentle with yourself. Be kind.
Well, audience, ancestors, our future super babies, all above, and our amazing panelists, here we are, here we be. We have some takeaways to bring to our work, knowing that it is super complex. We are in gratitude. We are in gratitude. We are in gratitude. And I feel blessed this morning. So we are going to say bye to our amazing panelists. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street right now. Bye, panelists. And we're going to go to Jamaica. We'll turn off our cameras. And here we rock out. All right. Bye, y'all. Stay on the call. All right. But we going to be in listening mode. All right. Peace.